I saw this really cool spider web this morning, and as I was trying to get the video of the sunlight coming through it, I witnessed nature do what nature does. The horsefly got tangled up in the spider web, and that I forget the name of that spider, but that spider is not poisonous. We've got quite a few of those around here. They look horrendous, and they get quite a bit bigger than that. I forget what they're called, but they take care of the insects. So I try not to mess with them if I see them around. So it is a new day and a new week working on the underground water tank shed, and I think I'm going to do 2 more courses, maybe 3 on the back, and then I'm going to start the process of backfilling. But one of the thoughts that I had, one of the questions that I knew was going to come up was why not put some dead men in behind this? And it's just long enough that it's right there. It probably wouldn't hurt to do one right in the middle of the structure. It's used to support a very long wall. Oftentimes it goes into the hill. On the back of the shop, I had to do a couple of dead men to keep that from moving around. As far as this is concerned, I'm not going to do it. I just don't want to mess with the native soil. I feel like my odds are better to just not mess with the soil that was there. Then I don't have to worry as much about settling and erosion and all that stuff. And then the big thing is I'm going to spend some time up here trying to prevent the water from going straight against the shed. But more than anything, I'm just going to watch and see. And this is built well enough that it's not going anywhere for a very long time. But today the focus is to get all of the last of the railroad ties set and nailed off. And then I'm going to start with the plastic, putting the plastic around the outside. And then I'm going to hopefully get a chance to put the French drain in, and then I'm going to start backfilling. But before I get too far, I need to make sure that I'm high enough on this back wall to at least be above the natural level of the dirt. I knew the question about installing deadmen was going to come up, and the bottom line is if the wall was any longer, I would do it. But what I found was when I staggered the seams with the railroad ties that stiffened that back wall up so well that I didn't really need to do the dead man. But ultimately only time will tell. During the construction of the underground watershed, I had a couple of different moments where I used the excavator to push against one of the walls to try and line things up a little bit here and there. And what I found was the walls did not move very much. And this ultimately caused me to feel even better about what I was doing. The shed is very well built, and it's not going anywhere for a very long time. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with those 12-inch smooth shank spikes that I used to lock everything together, because it simply took so much effort to drive those spikes in even after I pre-drilled the holes. But now that I'm approaching 9 feet off the ground, it's now obvious the effort was worthwhile because, again, the building is very solid and it is not moving around in any way. I'll use the excavator here shortly to push on the back wall to line up one of the railroad ties that has a slight curve in it. I had to use the excavator to do this on a few different occasions just to utilize some of these imperfect railroad ties. But with an average weight of 175 pounds and somewhere around 80 railroad ties, this little structure right here weighs nearly 15,000 pounds. I considered building the underground water tank shed big enough for 3 of these 2,500 gallon tanks, which means the back wall would have been at least 1 more railroad tie long. And in that case, I most certainly would have had to put a couple of dead men in behind that wall. And now that I'm at this point, I'm glad I didn't build this big enough for 3 tanks. I wish there was a legitimate alternative to railroad ties, like cedar timbers or something like that. But cedar does not have the strength that these railroad ties have. And for a structure this large, to do it out of wood, the only wood that would last any length of time, unfortunately, is going to be railroad ties. And again, the railroad ties will not be in contact in any way with our water, so I'm not concerned about contamination that way. All that I really care about is that this structure lasts a long time. My wife's grandfather built a home out of railroad ties. I think it was back in the 1950s. And later, as the I-10 went through southern Arizona, they would sell that home and the home would be torn down, which probably is for the better. But my mother-in-law and her family lived in that structure for quite some time. And again, my wife's grandfather lived to be into his 90s. So he's my canary in the coal mine when it comes to railroad ties, I suppose. But this is the moment where I realize that I'm just about done stacking railroad ties on the water tank shed. To me, railroad ties remind me of the Southwest and growing up in the high deserts, spending time in the Superstition Mountains, and occasionally finding an old abandoned mine shaft where railroad ties were often used as structural beams. There was a time in my life where a good solid railroad tie might cost you $8 or $10. Over the last couple of years, with everything else that's changed, supply and demand obviously has impacted the price of these railroad ties, and what should be probably a $15 railroad tie is nearly $30. Because of how I laid out the railroad ties, I really had very little waste. And on this back wall, I decided to go up 2 courses higher than the front wall, not so much for the dirt, but because I need to put a pitch on the roof once I get the other tanks set and start framing the new roof in. All right, stacking of the railroad ties is all done. The front edge measures about 8 feet exactly, which to the top of the water tank, the actual specs call for 8 feet. Okay, on the back side, I went about 18 inches higher than the front side, and not so much for the dirt retention as much as I need to put a pitch on this roof. And that will also give me more access to that lid on the tank. So the next step is wrapping this thing in plastic and then getting the French drain laid out, and then very carefully I'm going to shade that French drain with some good loose sandy dirt that I have. And then once I get about a foot of dirt over the top of that, it's time to backfill this thing, and I'm hoping to get all this done today. We will see. That is a 10-foot by 100-foot roll of 6mm plastic from the local big box store. And I knew the back wall was 9 feet tall, so this would leave a foot of plastic around the bottom for the French drain to sit on. The 6mm plastic would end up working out perfectly, and I still have about another 35 feet left. We are ready to backfill. So now I am ready to lay out the French drain around the outside and get it all prepped and just kind of get it all sitting in place. I'll probably throw a little bit of dirt on it just to kind of protect it. And then I'm going to start backfilling, work my way around. It's going to get awful dusty, but I've been really looking forward to getting this done. It is awful warm. It's so warm I have to set the camera in the shade because it keeps shutting off, but it's got to be mid-90s. But I feel like this is probably the last week that we're going to get like this, and we're going to start trending colder. So I need to get this buttoned up, especially the dirt work done. as soon as I can. Okay, we are ready for backfill. I'll say it right here and right now, but I bet money that that French drain never has a drop of water in it. But if enough water does get back here, it needs to have a place to go, and I'm hoping that the way I laid that plastic out and set that French drain on top of it, that if water gets down there, it'll find its way out without doing any damage. This corner of the mountain has a lot of sand in it, so the soil drains really well anyway. Now that I'm backfilling with the excavator, I need to move just enough dirt between these two sheds where I can position the excavator to move the first 2,500 gallon water tank. Once I get all the dirt moved around, I'll spend a couple of days just working on the grading, doing everything I can to ensure that as this dirt settles, that there's natural drainage away from the building. But this dirt is a mixture of volcanic ash and limestone, and there's not a whole lot of clay, so once it packs in place, it usually gets really, really hard like concrete. On our next video, you're going to get to see the process of moving the first water tank, tying the new water line in from the new shed to the existing plumbing system, the backfill, the grade, and if all goes well, the old shed will be torn down and the second 2,500 gallon tank will be set in place and connected to the plumbing system. And then at that point, all that's left to do will be framing up the roof and maybe putting down a little bit of grass seed. We thank you guys for taking time to watch our videos, and we hope that in the next few videos we'll get to the conclusion of this particular project, especially as the weather starts to change. But again, we wanted to say thank you, and we will see you guys in just a few days.